Good morning. I'm Phil Lipoff. Today on ABC News Live, the UK has a new prime minister again. Former finance minister Rishi Sunak was the runner-up to Liz Truss the last time around, and now he will take over as she resigned last week, just 44 days into her job. The general in command of Ukraine's forces speaking out in an exclusive interview to our Ian panel, explaining how the counteroffensive has been so successful. This as a new threat is sparking fears over a potential nuclear attack. We've got the latest from inside Ukraine. And Election Day just 15 days away. Control of Congress is on the ballot. We'll examine the closest Senate race in the country as Catherine Cortez Masto faces off with Republican Adam Laxalt. This is in Nevada. We begin with some breaking news. The St. Louis Public School District has confirmed that 2 students are injured and on the way to the hospital after a shooting at a high school. It happened just this morning. The district says police stopped the shooter inside of the school, and they are still on site. The campus is still on lockdown. This is a developing story, and we will keep you updated as soon as more details come into us. Now to an exclusive interview with the commander of Ukraine's ground forces. He is warning that Ukraine is worried about Vladimir Putin's nuclear threats, as we are learning of more disturbing rhetoric coming out of Moscow today. ABC News chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell is in Ukraine for us.
America, Britain and France denouncing Russia's claims that Ukraine's planning to detonate a so-called dirty bomb. Russian state media making the same claims, saying it would be blamed on Russia. A dirty bomb is a conventional bomb laced with radioactive material. Russia's defense minister urgently calling his counterparts in London, Paris and Washington to warn them of the alleged plot, though offering no evidence. But in a joint statement, the 3 countries saying, "We all reject Russia's transparently false allegations." But the claims are raising fears because Russia has repeatedly used this tactic of falsely accusing Ukraine of planning attacks that it's about to carry out itself.
How are you?
Earlier, I sat down for an exclusive interview with a man in charge of Ukrainian ground forces, Colonel General Alexander Syrskyi.
How worried are you? How worried should all of us be about Putin's nuclear threats?
I must agree with you that we are and should be worried, and I do believe that such a threat really exists, and we have to take it into account.
Syrskyi gave Russia its first major defeat, defending the capital at the start of the war, forcing Putin's men to retreat. He's now leading the major counteroffensive here in Kharkiv region, already liberating thousands of square miles of territory.
We create the conditions under which we can make the enemy lose confidence, get nervous, start taking losses, and abandon their positions.
General Syrskyi graduated from the oldest Russian military school in the 1980s, studying Soviet battlefield tactics he says Russia's still using today.
A rather basic question, but I think an important question. Are you winning this war?
Of course, I think we are winning, because first and foremost, we are winning mentally, and we have success on the front line. We understand that this war is about survival of our people and our state, and this is why we have no other option but to win.
For now, Putin is losing the land war, but he's responded with mass mobilization at home and mass strikes in Ukraine, targeting the country's power plants, leaving civilians in the cold and dark with winter rapidly approaching.
General Syrskyi, how do you end this war? How do you achieve peace?
You know how we say here in Ukraine, we long for peace, but after our victory. Those are quite simple words, but have profound meaning.
Give me your vision of how this physically ends, what that looks like.
It's when Ukrainian flags will fly all over our borders, including Crimea.
Well, we have some Kremlin reaction this morning. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov talking about what he says is the West's distrust of Russia's warning about plans to create this so-called dirty bomb, saying the threat is obvious, it's up to them to believe it or not. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Kuleba simply warning that Russians often accuse others of what they plan themselves. Phil?
All right, Ian Pannell from Ukraine, thank you. And for more on the latest on what's happening in Ukraine, I'd like to bring in ABC News national security and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. Mick, always good to see you. Let's start with this accusation that Russia is making, that Ukraine is getting ready to use a dirty bomb. That is so troubling because we've seen this tactic before, Russia accusing Ukraine of doing one thing that Russia may just be about to do. How worried are you about this?
Very worried, Phil. This, quite frankly, shows that their intelligence operations are not only as immoral as their military operations, they're as amateur. It's very obvious that Russia is intending to do this, from my opinion. And they often, like you just mentioned, accuse people of doing something that they intend to do. So this is right out of their playbook, and everybody knows it. And I think that's why there's so much concern that they may actually be looking to set off a dirty bomb in Ukraine.
Well, the Pentagon said that Secretary Austin rejected any pretext for Russian escalation. So what happens from here?
So certainly if they do use weapons of mass destruction, and I do not know if a dirty bomb would be considered that by the United States, by the Pentagon, but if it is, I believe the United States will unilaterally react and likely strike targets in Ukraine of Russia directly. And I hope that they do that. I think that would certainly raise to the level that it would need a response from the United States. It is widely reported that the 101st Airborne Division has been deployed to multiple NATO countries. They are within miles of Ukraine. Hopefully, we don't have to use those troops, but they are extraordinarily capable, and they are there in the event that the United States does have to enter into Ukraine.
All right, Mick Mulroy, thanks for the expertise today. As always, we appreciate it. We are continuing to follow that breaking news we brought to you just a short time ago. St. Louis Public School District has confirmed that 2 students are injured and on the way to the hospital after a shooting there at the high school this morning. District says police stopped that shooter inside of the school, and he is now in police custody. They, of course, are still there on the site, the campus in lockdown. This is a developing story. As you see, developments are coming in pretty quickly. We will keep you updated as soon as we learn anything more. Now to an ABC News exclusive with the Uvalde school staffer speaking out for the very first time about the claim that in the early days after the mass shooting, that she had actually left the door open during the attack that allowed the shooter to get in. Amy Marin says her life is in shambles, all because of that false accusation by one of the state's top law enforcement officials. Now we have exclusive, newly obtained video that backs up her story. ABC's John Quinones with the latest from Uvalde.
It was just days after a gunman killed 21 in a Uvalde elementary school that Texas police said this.
We know from video evidence, 1127, the exterior door where we knew the shooter entered was propped open by a teacher.
That woman, a school staffer, Amy Marin, speaking for the first time, says those words from law enforcement vilified her to her own community.
He said, a teacher left the door propped open. And I looked at my daughter and I said, that's a lie.
Did you hear anything about what they were saying about you?
I did. People saying she needs to be fired for what she did, leaving the door open. But I know what I did.
Just a few days later, the Texas Department of Public Safety retracted the statement, admitting that Marin had closed the door, but that it didn't lock automatically like it was supposed to. Now, video footage from the school, newly obtained by ABC News and still not released to the public, shows that Marin, in fact, did what she was supposed to do when she spotted the gunman crash the car and approached school grounds with a rifle. We asked her to start from the beginning.
Can you tell me what you're doing there?
I'm rolling the cart out because I'm going to go meet my coworker outside. I'm running in to get my phone.
Because?
Because the crash happened already.
And you're calling 911
yes.
to get help?
Mm-hmm. My first thought was somebody had a heart attack because he was coming like 80 miles an hour. And then he hit the rail and then crashed into the ditch. I'm running to him to help him.
Little do you know, he has a gun.
Yes.
Marin kicks the rock away that was holding the door open.
As I'm running back, I tell her, he's got a gun, he's shooting.
The kids are running, the kids are running.
The kids were playing outside in the playground over here, and I see them running and screaming.
Come on, guys, hurry, come on.
And they're coming in, and I'm yelling at them, get in your rooms, get in your rooms.
Today, Marine says the shooting and its aftermath have traumatized her. Her body shakes, she speaks with a stutter, and she suffers from anxiety and depression.
I am suffering mentally, of course, emotionally. I still don't sleep. I see those victims' faces. I pray for them every night.
Remarkable and such an important interview. John Quinones, thank you for that. And make sure you follow ABC News' continuing series Uvalde 365 for ABC News reporting on the ground in Uvalde, focusing on that Texas community and how it forges on in the shadow of such grief and tragedy. Coming up, Election Day, now just over 2 weeks away, and early voting is already heating up. What you need to know ahead of these critical elections when we return. Election Day is just over 2 weeks away, and early voting is already heating up. Republicans rising in the polls, especially in battleground states across the board, including Nevada, where congressional correspondent Rachel Scott is tracking a race that could decide control of the Senate.
It's the closest Senate race in the country, a state that could decide control of the Senate. And this morning, it is a dead heat.
There's so much at stake. We all know that.
Take back Nevada, right?
Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is facing Republican Adam Laxalt, who led Trump's failed effort to overturn the 2020 results in the state.
They're running around peddling conspiracies and lies about an election that they claim was stolen that wasn't.
Laxalt, the state's former attorney general, zeroing in on the Republican playbook, focusing on the economy.
We simply cannot afford one more week of the Joe Biden, Catherine Cortez, Masto economy.
While Democrats are betting on abortion rights to drive momentum as early voting gets underway.
Adam Laxalt, not only does he not support abortion rights, but just a woman's right to choose in this state, which Nevadans have decided that they respect, he doesn't support that.
With just weeks to go, the president has put the issue front and center, but he's been largely absent from the campaign trail, trading public campaign rallies for big dollar fundraisers behind closed doors.
So somebody's noticeably missing from the trail here in the final few weeks of this pivotal campaign. How about Joe Biden?
Biden has not even traveled to Nevada.
Senator, would you campaign with President Biden?
He is always welcome in Nevada, but as you can see, my focus is on getting out and talking to Nevadans.
That's not a yes.
It's just talking to them about...
Two Democrats that will appear with President Biden just 1 week out from Election Day. Charlie Crist, who's the Democrat challenging Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Those two will debate in just a few hours. And Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings, who is challenging Senator Marco Rubio. Both Democrats in very tough races, Phil.
Rachel Scott from Las Vegas. Thank you very much, Rachel. Meantime, the Biden administration must respond to a federal appeals court today after it issued a preliminary injunction temporarily halting the student loan forgiveness program. ABC's Alex Perche joins me now live with more. Alex, it's good to see you. First off, what does this mean for the millions of Americans who have already applied or are planning to apply for this kind of forgiveness?
Hey, Phil, good to see you, too. So we're going to start with that latter group, the ones planning to apply for this forgiveness. Well, right now, I mean, this stay basically orders the Biden administration not to act on this program. And so it's essentially been paused for those planning. Now, what's unclear is what this means for the 22 million borrowers who have already applied for relief. Now, the Biden administration was set to be able to essentially clear debt as early as this week. I think the most realistic expectation was that it could start erasing debt by mid-November. But again, this stay kind of muddies those waters and makes it unclear as to what's happened for folks that have already applied.
Alex, this was a key campaign promise for President Biden. Think this could have any effect on the midterm elections, which are just now over 2 weeks away?
Phil, I think absolutely it's something that people are paying attention to. And look, I mean, this student debt forgiveness is something that Democrats have really kind of tapped into as a rallying, ballot-pulling issue for a lot of young voters, right? I mean, I think the ones that, and we've been crisscrossing the country talking to voters as to like what's really kind of resonating them. But for a lot of Democrats, it's abortion and then this student loan forgiveness. I'm going to quote a Quinnipiac poll that came out in August. It found that 88% of Democrats approved. That's an incredibly high suicide number. So this is an issue that they've noted that resonates with their base. I would say that even with this stay, the White House is continuing to encourage borrowers to apply for relief. They think that this is going to motivate people to the polls.
So I'll ask you the question that so many people out there are asking right now, Alex. Hopefully you have an answer to it. What's the next step in this legal battle?
Well, Phil, listen, the basic next step is the Biden administration has to file an appeal by end of day today. But look, I mean, there are so many challenges to this student debt forgiveness program. I mean, we've counted at least 6 other states who have asked this district court for an injunction prohibiting the administration to go through on top of the one that's currently being worked out. But I think the big picture thing is, will this be worked out by January 1st? You know, the Biden administration has paused repayment for a lot of these loans through the end of the year. They said that was going to be the last extension. And so I think the big picture is whether or not this is going to be worked out through the court system by January 1st when the repayment schedules for a lot of these loans would kick back in.
All right, well, we know you'll be tracking it for us. Alex Brachet, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So a trial to determine whether Georgia can continue to ban abortion as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy has now begun in an Atlanta courtroom. Abortion rights groups are challenging Georgia's current law banning most abortions once a detectable human heartbeat is present, a point before many women even know that they're pregnant. This comes as at least 14 states have ceased nearly all abortion services since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Senior policy reporter Ann Flaherty joins us now live with more on all of this. And Ann, I know you have been watching this hearing closely, so what stood out so far?
So this hearing just got underway, Phil, and this is the Sister Song. This is a black feminist group. They're being represented by ACLU. And they are making the case that Georgia's 6-week abortion ban that has very few exceptions violates the state's constitutional right to privacy. They say that is a fundamental right and that this law should be tossed out. Now, part of their strategy is laying out how complicated pregnancy can be for a woman. They've brought forward a witness from Emory. She's the chief of obstetrics and gynecology, to lay out everything that could possibly go wrong with the pregnancy, to say that if this law is allowed to stand, that prosecutors could have access to those medical records.
This will be a non-jury trial, as you know, scheduled to last 2 days. So what are you watching for?
So I think the judge's line of questioning is very interesting in this. He does seem to be very sympathetic to the idea that there can be many complications with a pregnancy. At one point, he joked this morning that, this line of questioning could go on for 4 days of testimony, laying out everything that can happen to a woman's body when she becomes pregnant. But I think what he's going to get down to is the very nitty-gritty of whether or not the state's constitution does, in fact, protect privacy as an umbrella for abortion rights. That's the case that the ACLU is going to make. The state, we haven't heard from them as much yet. We expect them to argue that this is the will of the people. This is the law that voters voted for.
Georgia tried to hold off these hearings until after the midterm elections. So how significant do you think this timing is?
So this is huge. This is an abortion hearing that is unfolding across 2 days, right as voters are already, there's early voting. It's record early voting in Georgia. So voters are already going to the polls. So this is exactly what Democrats want to talk about. The state tried to say, let's hold this off until after the election. The judge said, why? Let's get this done. Let's do it. So, that was a big win for Democrats. We're going to see how this might impact that early voting.
Absolutely. Ann Flaherty, thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, coming up, more of today's top headlines when we return. Welcome back to ABC News Live. The teenager accused of killing 4 fellow students and injuring more at a Michigan high school last November pleaded guilty today to all 24 charges against him. The charges against him include terrorism and premeditated murder. The teen's parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, were charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter after allegedly making the gun accessible and failing to recognize warning signs about their son before the shooting. They have both pleaded not guilty. South Korea's military is on heightened alert after trading warning shots with North Korea overnight. South Korea says it fired along its west coast to repel a North Korean merchant ship in the area. North Korea responded with artillery fire. There were no reports of any real fighting, but the sea boundary off the Korean peninsula's west coast has been a source of long-running animosity. Salman Rushdie's agent says the author has lost sight in one eye and the use of a hand after an attack from a man who rushed the stage at a literary event in August in Western New York. His literary agent told the Spanish-language newspaper El País that Rushdie suffered 3 serious wounds to his neck, 15 more wounds to his chest and torso in that attack. The 24-year-old suspect pleaded not guilty to attempted murder and assault. And we want to wish happy Diwali to everyone who celebrates. Every year, more than 1 billion people come together for the 5-day Festival of Lights. The celebrations shine brightest, though, in India. Homes and streets are covered with colorful lights to mark the Hindu festival that symbolizes the victory of light over darkness. I'm Phil Lipoff. Stay with ABC News Live as we continue with more news, context, and analysis next.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.